Good evening, councillors, officers and members of the public. Welcome to Tendring District Council Planning Committee on Tuesday the 2nd of September 2025. If you have mobile devices on you, could I ask you please to either put them on silent or to turn them off? And if the fire alarm sounds, it's not a drill, there's no drill scheduled for this evening, it will be the real thing. And if you would leave the building by the marked exits, please. This committee is being live streamed, it is also being recorded. The link to the live stream can be found on the council's website at www.tenderingdc.gov.uk/live meetings. For the purpose of the recording, I will introduce everyone. I'm Councillor Maria Fowler, Chairman of the Planning Committee, and I will introduce the members of the committee separately. Councillor Maurice Alexander.
Good evening, Chairman.
Councillor Jeff Bray.
Good evening, Chair.
Councillor Richard Everett.
Evening, Chairman.
Councillor Bernard Goldman.
Evening, Chair.
Councillor Geeta Sudra.
Good evening, Chair.
Councillor Anne Wiggins.
Good evening, Chairman.
And my Vice Chairman, Councillor John White.
Good evening, Chairman.
Thank you, councillors. The council officers assisting the committee this evening are from Committee Services, Bethany Jones, and from Leadership Support, Maddie Adgar. From Planning Services, Planning Officers, Matthew Lang and Alison Pope. Our Planning Manager, John Pateman-G. Our Corporate Director of Planning and Community, Gary Guyver, and our Planning Solicitor, Mrs. Joanne Fisher. There are changes to this evening's running order on the agenda. The changes are that items 5 and item 6 will change places. So the first application on the agenda this evening to be heard will be the agenda for the Lighthouse at Lower Marine Parade, Dovercourt. The applications will be presented by the officer, followed by public speaking in the order of the applicant or agent, any members of the public who have already asked to speak for or against the application, a speaker from the town or parish council, and then finally the ward councillor. Members of the committee will then have the chance to question the officer, and once all the questions are answered, the committee will then debate. When all the points are discussed, finally I shall ask if we have a resolution and then call for a proposer and a seconder, and the committee will then vote according to the normal rules. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence and substitutions. Please, Bethany.
Thank you, Chair. I've received apologies on behalf of Councillor Smith, with Councillor Sudra substituting.
Thank you, Bethany. Item 2, minutes of the last meeting. Members, have you looked at the minutes of the meeting from the 5th of August? If I could have a proposer, if we're happy with those. Councillor White, thank you. A seconder, Councillor Goldman, thank you. Are we all in favour? If I could have a show of hands, please, members. Except for Councillor Bray, because he wasn't here. So that's one abstention. Thank you. I shall sign these. Item 3, declarations of interest. Councillor White.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I am the ward councillor for application number 24/00560 outline, but I am not predetermined, and therefore I will not be leaving the chamber, and I will take part in the discussions and the voting thereon.
Thank you, Councillor White. I also have a declaration of interest, which is now item 5 on the agenda, which is A2 25/00/483/full, the Lighthouse, Lower Marine Parade, Dovercourt, Harwich. I am predetermined on this application. Also, several of the objectors are known to me, i.e. friends or acquaintances. So I will withdraw from the committee for this item and I will hand the chair over to our Vice Chairman, Councillor White. Item 4 on the agenda, questions on notice pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 38. Bethany, please.
Thank you, Chair. There are none.
Thank you. So I will now hand the chair over to Councillor White and withdraw from the committee.
Thank you very much. This application is A2 25/000483 full. It's for a building adjacent to the Lighthouse, Lower Marine Parade, Dovercourt, Harwich, CO12 3ST. And I understand Miss Alison Hope is going to take this one to us. So, Alison.
Thank you, Councillor White. Good evening, members. The application seeks full planning permission for a change of use of land for the siting of a single-storey modular building for community use. This proposal is before the committee as the application site is on Tendring District Council-owned land. The application site is located on the Dovercourt seafront along Lower Marine Parade and forms part of the safeguarded open space along the seafront. The site also lies within flood zones 2 and 3. The Lighthouse site incorporates a single-storey cafe with facilities and changing rooms, the surfaced roller skating rink, and further hard standing and grassed areas. The Lighthouse site has pedestrian access only from Lower Marine Parade. The red line on this aerial photo shows the location of the proposed modular building on existing hard standing to the south of the roller skating rink. The new building will allow the expansion of the existing activities all year round, which are run by the applicant as a registered community interest company called Family Activities Community Engagement Support UK CIC. The company operates from the site and works in conjunction with Active Essex and Essex County Council to offer low-cost and free activities such as home education groups, holiday clubs, toddler time, yoga sessions, mental health support, food support, cooking classes, to name but a few. This photo shows the existing cafe and hub on the site. This photo is looking northwest from Lower Marine Parade across the site to the houses in Seafield Road, and shows the marquee that has been used during the summer months to provide additional covered space in inclement weather and provide shelter when it has been hot. The proposed building will be sited in the approximate position of the marquee. This photo shows to the left the houses in Seafield Road and the open space of the putting green and the Lighthouse site on the right of the photo. This photo is looking north from Lower Marine Parade across the putting green open space and part of the Lighthouse site, where you can see the residential properties of St Michael's Road and Franks Road in the background. Franks Avenue, sorry. This photo shows part of the roller skating rink and the tarmac area in front of it, which the proposed building will be sited. This photo shows a view within the site of the tarmac area in front of the roller skating rink, which at the far end the proposed building will be sited. This shows the elevations of the proposed building. The building is constructed of steel and finished in grey. However, it is proposed to clad the building and finish it in blue to match the existing cafe building. The exact external finish details will be conditioned for further approval, as will the details of the ramps and any railings for pedestrian access to the building. This shows the building floor plan, one large open area apart from the bathroom and an office. The principle of development in this case is considered acceptable. The application site is designated as safeguarded open space in the local plan, a status that will remain unchanged. Currently, the Lighthouse site serves community needs with green space, outdoor sports facilities and amenities for children and youth, in line with its local plan designation. Maintaining a variety of open spaces is essential to meet local demands, and the site meets that need. Community use will continue, with a modular building added to expand available activities. The development is considered acceptable due to the site's established role as a community facility, conveniently located near Parkston, Harwich and Dovercourt. As mentioned previously, the finish of the building is proposed to be blue cladding to match the existing cafe and hub building. Although the colour is distinct, it is considered to fit with the seaside theme and would not result in material visual harm or landscape impacts. It is acknowledged that the proposed building will be visible from neighbouring residential properties. However, due to the siting, position and scale of the proposed building within the site, a significant distance from the nearest dwellings, there is not considered to be significant impact on neighbouring residential amenity. The potential impacts from the building's use is expected to be similar to the current site usage. The Lighthouse site has no planning restrictions on operating hours, but a premises licence also allows certain activities like music and plays during specified times. Other material considerations include accessibility and parking, flood risk, drainage, ecology and biodiversity, and these matters are covered in the committee report. Harwich Town Council has no objection to the application. 1 letter of support has been received and 13 letters of objection are noted in the report. I draw your attention to the update sheet whereby the applicant has confirmed that the existing cafe building is connected to the main sewer and it is proposed to connect the new building to the same. In conclusion, officers are recommending approval subject to the conditions set out in my committee report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we have 3 speakers in the public speaking. Let's start with the applicant or agent, Mr. Gary Stanford. If you'd like to come forward, Mr. Stanford, take a seat by the microphone. When you're settled and got your microphone switched on, there's a switch on at the bottom, and once you're settled, you have 3 minutes to convince us.
Well, thank you very much. As explained, I'm one of the directors for Faces UK CIC, who operate down on the Lighthouse Lower Marine Parade. We have a variety of activities which include, but are not limited to, free holiday clubs, toddler sessions, healthy cooking classes. We also deliver food parcels. We have a youth club, mental health awareness support, send groups, community meetings and community events. Approximately 80% of the people that use our facility are from low-income families. Our HAF programs offer 1,500 spaces throughout the year. With the addition of this unit, we'll be able to reach more children. And these are from children that come from low-income households. So this makes sure that throughout the holidays, they're still getting their hot meals and their drinks throughout the day, as well as getting their exercise. In addition, we distribute 300 food parcels to local families annually. Programs such as the healthy cooking classes are also designed to support these families. The Lighthouse itself is a Dovercourt skating rink. It's been there since 1947. It used to be a very vibrant and busy roller skating rink, and it's the only operating outdoor roller skating rink now left in the country. There is new ones down in Brighton, but this is an original, and it still continues to operate such, maintain its heritage and value. And over the years, it's evolved. We've got a border community hub. It offers support across multiple areas while still providing free or low-cost roller skating for all ages. To remain successful and sustainable community asset, it must grow with the times. Our current building only accommodates around 20 people indoors, and with the new building, we'll be able to accommodate around 50 people. This will allow more community members to participate in activities, workshops and support programs all year round. This additional space is essential to maximise the venue's potential and expand and continue to access inclusive, affordable programs and ensure the rink and the hub remain a vibrant, sustainable community asset for all. Current marquees we use are not sustainable, they are damaged every year and need replacing, and they don't provide a warm area childcare for the children during the winter months, especially the October half terms. The new building will be fully enclosed, heated and cooled, and allow activities to run all year round. It will give us safe, secure storage. It will expand our capacity so we can reach more people, and it will help expand the HAV programs, workshops and free community activities, which we often reach full capacity on at the moment. Approval of this temporary modular building is practical and necessary solution to meet all the growing needs of the community. It addresses past challenges, expands opportunities for all residents, particularly low-income families, including the teens. Additional space will provide the building. The additional space this building will provide is essential to maintain and expand our programs, food support, and it will also give opportunities for new volunteering and free full-time positions to grow and expand our range of activities. There will be no change to current licence and hours, and the modular building is expected to reduce noise compared to the temporary marquees we have, and it will provide a quieter, more controlled environment for our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And you're spot on your 3 minutes. The member of the public to speak against the application, this is Michelle Koolhaus. Welcome, and the same rules apply. Once you get settled and start the microphone for the recording, you have 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you. So while the activities described by Mr. Stanford are commendable, the primary concern for residents is due to excessive noise disturbance, already endured on numerous occasions. Since soon after the lighthouse opened, various complaints have been made directly by a number of residents from the surrounding area in regard to noise disturbance due to excessively loud music. These complaints were made directly, either face-to-face or via telephone, to the lighthouse. Despite Mrs. Stanford's assurances that the noise level would be controlled, the disturbances have continued on some subsequent occasions. This has necessitated complaints to be made to the Tendring District Council Environmental Protection Team, which has been documented. While the number of disturbances has decreased, on occasions excessive noise is still occurring, causing great distress to residents who are unable to enjoy the peace of not only their own gardens, but even inside their homes with the doors and windows closed, and sometimes vibrations from the beat of the music can even palpably be felt indoors. The fact that the report dated 2nd of September 2025, report of the Corporate Director of Planning and Community, states in paragraph 8.16 that the remedy of noise concerns are subject to separate legislation and would represent a matter for the Council's Environmental Protection Team to investigate is frankly bewildering. Surely no final decision should be made on the planning application until the Environmental Protection Team has carried out said investigation and reported back to the Planning Committee. Is it usual practice to make decision on planning applications without all of the facts being ascertained? What guarantees can be given by the Lighthouse that the details in the application are followed? And how can the Lighthouse and Tendring District Council be held accountable if things take a different course? For example, how can we be sure that the Lighthouse will not transition into a venue holding evening events such as screening sports, accompanied by the consumption of alcohol, with the potential to increase disturbance further, in particular to the Hollies, which is the adjacent property? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, now we have no comments from the Town Council, and we have no comments from the ward members. So my question now, Alison, is there any points that you further want to discuss or pick up?
No, not at this stage, thank you.
Thank you very much. In which case, members, it's your chance to question to Alison. Yes, Councillor Sudra.
Thank you. Alison, the relevant planning history doesn't have like the timeline or the dates when approved. planning was given, for instance, for the erection of pavilion, etc. Would you be able to give that information today?
Just as a kind of general guidance, the first one in terms of access ramps and roller shuttered doors, am I on the right one? Yes. is so the code says 10, which implies it's 2010. Formation of store and viewing area is 91, which implies it's 1991. The following two are 1963 in terms of the public shelter on the skating ring, and then the last one is 1960 in terms of the application reference number for the cafe and public convenience. Now, that said, it might be 1 or 2 years either side of that. I haven't got the exact dates to hand, but we provide the reference of the date year within the application when it was submitted to us. It could be determined within a year or two after that. I can't give you that certainty. I apologise that those specific decision dates weren't in the papers. If they are required, we can look them up individually if you wish.
No, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Right, colleagues, further questions? Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Chair. I picked up on something mentioned by the member of the public who was concerned about noise disturbance, which can be a concern. Could be an issue, just a slightly strange question, but I'm aware that in some venues there is a method of controlling whereby basically the music cuts out if it goes above a certain amount of decibels. Is it possible to deal with that situation via that method? It has effectively an auto cutout system. I remember some years ago the Flamingo, when it was operational, had it, and so did some other places. Is that an option? Is that something we can ask for, or is that not our concern?
Okay, this is where I put, I don't know, breadcrumbs within the pigeons a bit, because ultimately there is the site and there is the building proposal before you. The building proposal before you is for the siting of a building. We're not dealing with change of use of land. We're dealing with just the siting of a building to serve the current use of that land. So therefore, whatever music license may or may not be available on this site, licensing is a separate matter to us. I can't control the land. I can control the building because that's the proposal before you. So in terms of noise or music played within the building, we could put a condition on in respect of controlling that element. My difficulty is it doesn't stop them blaring out music on the rest of the site as they so wish or have current permission to do so. So I would argue, or not argue, I would suggest to members that controlling the music within the building might deal with a music concern if there was one, but it doesn't actually necessarily control the rest of the land. And I'm not quite sure how reasonable it is or how effective that might be. I can't say it can't be done because it is a possibility, but I'm trying to work around you've got to deal with a larger site as well as the fact that this is just for the building.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I sort of knew I was crossing over into licensing areas there, but it was worth asking the question. Sometimes things can be cured that way. The only other question I've got is when we were on the site, and I think one of the photographs, the very first photograph, I think showed it quite clearly, there was a large residential building to the rear which would overlook. We're saying no visual harm. We're sure of that, no issues at all with visual harm to that particular property.
Yeah, do you mean the one that's clad in wood? Yeah, about 3 stories, isn't it? I think no. No, I think the modular building is single story and it is sited away from the boundaries. So yes, it's acknowledged you will be able to see it visually, and it will be clad in blue, so it will stand out from the seafront and from whatever view you take of it. But it will not significantly affect neighbouring properties in the public realm there.
Thank you. The counter argument, of course, is there is already one blue building there, so 1 or 2 you could argue. And the last thing I just wanted to sort of pick up on, the size of the building was showing 18 by 5 by 3, I believe, is the size we're looking at, which is a little bit larger than the marquee there.
Sorry, Jeff, I don't know if it's...
1, 2, yeah. Yeah, it's all working. It's probably me, I'm just a bit quiet tonight. I've lost my thread now. So just looking at that, one of the things that occurred to me is if, for argument's sake, the committee were minded to refuse this, presumably there would be a continuation of the use of the marquee, and that obviously also has the potential to produce high noise values. Or is there something I'm missing there? But it seems to me that if this weren't built, the marquee would continue to be used.
Yes, that is correct. Yes, if this wasn't built and approved, they could continue to use the marquee or more than one marquee in its place, yes, as a temporary measure, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Further questions from any member? Yes, Councillor Wiggins.
I just wanted to know how many users there are at the moment, and yeah, I have gone off. What the capacity would be should they get, if they get planning permission.
I don't have the exact capacity, but I know that the applicant who spoke did mention that, and I didn't jot it down, so I'm sorry about that. I don't know if anybody else got that. No. No, it's not.
I understand from my colleague that it's only 50 people. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Questions? From none? In which case, if we've got no further questions, open up the debate. Hopefully that we might get a proposal out of this. So, yes, Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. As most of you know, that I was bred and born in that area and well versed with this skating rink, having many scuffed knees in my distant youth. It's been there a long time, and if I remember right, there was music playing around the actual skating rink while people were skating. I've looked at this very carefully, and I can see all the logical reasons why questions are being asked, but what I don't see is any reason that we can actually refuse it. It doesn't fall. We were concerned about the sewage and whether it would be connected to the mains or one of these biomass or possibly a tank, but that's been solved. And we can, as far as I'm concerned, that was my principal concern. So with that, I'm going to recommend that we approve this with the subject to the conditions.
Yes, Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Chair. Just popping back to a question very quickly, if I can. Can I reconfirm the operating times that would be permitted for the new building?
Yes, it will be 9 a.m. till 10 p.m.
And that's 7 days a week?
It is 7 days a week, including bank holidays, yes.
Okay. Concerns me a little bit. It's a little late for loud music. Okay. I think moving into debate, thanks, Chair. I think looking at this, there's going to be something there anyway which potentially could produce the same level of music as the building. You might argue that music in the building might be stifled more than music in a marquee, so there's a strong argument there too. So looking at it, there will be something there. A building will be better for the users and the occupants than a marquee. I'm a touch concerned, so I'll just give some thought as to whether 10 p.m. is too late outside of summer. But I'll give that some thought. But at the moment, I'm sort of leaning that way. But I'm not ready to second yet. Thanks, Jim.
Right. So I have a proposal. Anybody else wish to speak before I ask for a seconder? There are 3 councillors at the present moment that haven't spoken on the subject. What are your views? Deathly silence was heard. Right. Yes. Thank you, Councillor Sudra.
Well, my thought is the skating rink's been there since 1947. So presumably, perhaps Morris can put some light on it, that there would be a certain amount of noise level throughout. Yeah. And presumably it would have been a busier skating rink back in the day. So I just think it's a valuable asset.
Councillor Bray.
Okay, I might be able to undo my problem. The operating times, 9 till in the morning till 10 p.m. 7 days a week, does that apply to the whole site or just to this building?
There are no planning restrictions in terms of operating hours on the whole site at all. It is the premises licence which has some control over the hours of certain activities on the site.
Got it. That's cleared that up for me. So theoretically, the rest of the site could be playing music until midnight. Okay. That being the case, then I am happy to second proposal of approval. Thank you, Chair.
Very much. No further comments, in which case I'm going to put the proposal to you that it is as written on page 75 and with the conditions that are spelled out. So I'm going to ask you to vote on that, and please can we do it with a show of hands? Those in favour, please show. Thank you. And those against? And any abstentions? 1. That application is approved. Thank you very much. And to turn and take up her duties, we'll have a 5-minute break now just to get the chairman back and established. And then we shall go back to the original running order, which is
Welcome back to Tendring District Council's Planning Committee on Tuesday the 2nd of September 2025. And we are now up to agenda item 6, which is A1-24/00560/OUT Welwick Site, Colchester Road, St Osyth. And to present this application for us, our officer, Mr Matthew Lang. Over to you, Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. So this application is an outline proposal for 37 dwellings at the Welwick site, which is a site to the north of St Osyth. The land is part of a wider development site for 190 units, which is commenced construction, which you would have seen on site yesterday. The wider site has permission for 190, and that's linked to enabling works at St Osyth Priory, as is this application for 37. The application, as I said, is an outline form with only the access to be considered at this stage. So this is the application site in red. So you can see there's two separate parcels, the northern parcel at the top there, and the southern parcel. It will make use of the existing consented access that's already been constructed. And you can see the blue line there represents the remainder of the Welwick site, where the 190 further units will be located. This is an aerial image. You can see substantial groundworks have recently taken place, considering the 190 unit development. The site was previously quarried land, that's why it's known as Welwick Pit. To the east of the site runs a public footpath that links up with Riddleswood to the north. To the north of the site is a large caravan site, and to the west is the St Osyth Priory Registered Garden and Conservation Area. To the south is the village of St Osyth, approximately 300 metres along Colchester Road. So these are views of the southern development parcel, and this is from the public right-of-way to the east of the site. So you can see views across looking west. You can see the Colchester Road in the distance beyond the hedge, and you can see the substantial works taking place on the site. Again, views looking west from the public right-of-way a bit further north. Again, you can see the public, or you can see Colchester Road to the north beyond the hedgerow. And these are views at the northern end, so this represents views of the northern development parcel, and you can see the mature hedgerow and trees present on the southern boundary of the car parking, the caravan site to the north. This is the site frontage from Colchester Road, so you can see the entrance to the public right-of-way there that runs along the eastern extremity of the site, and you can just see in the distance the new construction access which has been put in recently. Top left image shows views back from the public right-of-way towards St Osyth. The 190 unit scheme secured a public footpath and pedestrian crossing, which will be implemented upon occupation of that development. The top right image is views looking back northwards towards the site. So this is where the public pavement will be located. Then the bottom two images are at the northern end of the site, so you can see it's well screened from Colchester Road, which means that development will be largely screened from view in this location. So this is the indicative site layout plan. As I said, it's in outline form, so at the moment the layout is subject to change at reserved matters stage. You can see the southern development parcel there, which will accommodate the 13 units, and the northern development parcel, which will accommodate the 24. The northern development parcel will make use of the existing spine road that's been approved as part of the previous permission, and the southern access, the southern development parcel will have spur roads off of that access. It's a new zoomed in view of the northern development parcel, so you can see there's 24 dwellings there. They fit well on the site. The plans demonstrate that the dwellings will be spacious, they'll be served by sufficient parking, sufficient amenity space, and the intention is to provide a good, strong landscaped buffer to that northern boundary. This is the southern development parcel, the 13 dwellings, so these will be smaller, tight-knit in nature, and they'll look to relate more sufficiently to those cottages to the south, the farmers' cottages. Again, it's proposed that it will be landscaping along that southern boundary. So these are the indicative building heights. Again, it's indicative at this stage because scales are reserved matter, but it's proposed that the dwellings at the northern end could be up to 3-storey, and that's consistent with dwellings on the 190 scheme to the south, and the properties at the southern end, the southern development parcel, will be up to 2-storey in height. And this is an overlay of the existing consent with the proposal, so you can see the blue shows the layout of the existing development, and then you can see in black will be the proposal that's before you tonight. In terms of the northern development parcel, that's sited in an area of land that was previously, as part of the previous consent, going to be used by an archery club, and they've since relocated to Little Clacton. And the southern development parcel will be located in an area of open space, but because the northern parcel has been opened up, it's no longer going to be a private archery club. The open space associated with that part of the development will now become part of the wider overall scheme. So actually the 10% is open space is easily achieved. So these are indicative landscape view CGI images. You can see the top or the middle image there shows after 1 year. So this is from the public right of way to the east of the site. You can just see the top of the roofs beyond the, I believe it's a holiday lodge development along that public right of way. And then at the bottom you can see after 15 years the landscaping has matured sufficiently to screen them from view. These are views from the north along the public right of way, so northern agricultural land. In the middle image there you can see after 1 year you would just about see the roofs of the properties assimilating themselves amongst the hedgerow that's present on that boundary, and then after 15 years again the mature landscaping would sufficiently screen them from view. The council's tree and landscaping officer has reviewed these images and has no concerns in respect to the landscape impact. This is the highway access plan. So this was approved as part of the previous scheme, the 190 development. This approved the access, which will be utilised by this development, and it also approved, as I said, a public footpath, pedestrian crossing, and a 3 metre wide pedestrian cycleway into St Osoph to the south. So this has been secured as part of this application as well, alongside a public footpath, 2 metre wide footpath to the north of the site that will link up with bus stops to the north outside the caravan park. And on that basis, Highways have no objections to the proposal. In terms of the drainage strategy, the proposal will utilise a piped network which will lead to swales, and then it will lead to an existing pond located at the northwestern end of the site. So that will be sufficient to discharge surface water drainage, and the lead local flood authority have no objections in that respect, and it will all be on mains drainage. So turning, as I said at the outset, this application is submitted as enabling development to fund identified restoration works at the St Osoph Priory, as was the consented scheme on the wider site for 190 dwellings. The development seeks to fund or part fund those works listed within the table on the left, and the works listed equate to approximately 1.6 million and are index linked to a cost plan previously agreed as part of the approved St Osoph Priory business plan, which was secured as part of a Section 106 agreement associated with previous enabling developments at the Welwick site and at Westfield, which is a completed housing development to the west of the St Osoph Priory complex. The business plan that's been approved seeks to restore the Priory buildings to their optimum viable use, to help enable the use of the Priory as a wedding function venue alongside increased access to the general public. The enabling works relate to a Grade 1 listed property known as Darcy House, primarily the east and south wings, which is also known as the Abbott's Lodgings, and listed as priority works within the business plan to help facilitate the use of those buildings for functions and weddings and guest and holiday accommodation. The majority of the enabling works have been forward funded via an accelerated build works loan to fast track critical identified works to the Grade 1 listed Darcy House until such time that further enabling development is secured. These works were fast-tracked because the property as a whole is on the Historic England's at-risk register, and the Darcy House was in urgent need of repairs to ensure that the important heritage fabric was not lost. The forward funding works agreement protected these important heritage buildings from further deterioration and has now removed the Abbott's Lodgings from the at-risk register. In addition, the business plan that was secured as part of the 2019 Section 106 requirement, due to the COVID years and problems with grant funding, was falling behind. These delays were increasing the conservation deficit, which in turn would have led to even more enabling development being required in the future. The works being fast-tracked has reduced the conservation deficit from what it would have been if nothing had been done. It has also meant that the objectives within the business plan have not slipped back as far as they would have if no action had been taken. Furthermore, the business plan envisaged the property being open to the public as a wedding and events venue, and this was not possible until the works proposed in the agreement had been completed. The property has been open to the public for weddings and events for nearly 2 years, and this has facilitated more public access and educational visits via the St Osoph Trust. The forward funding arrangement also shows that the family are generally genuinely working to creatively securing the optimum viable use of the important historical buildings and open the Priory up to the public, helping to reduce the extent of further enabling development required. Therefore, overall, the principal development funding identified enabling works at St Osoph Priory is accepted and underpinned by the agreed business plan and corresponding condition survey that confirms the current deficit position. The submitted financial viability information has been independently assessed by BNP Paribas, and they have confirmed that the applicant's proposed development for 37 units provides the minimal number of units necessary to address the enabling works identified. Turning to the merits of the development, the application is before Planning Committee as the proposal represents a departure from the local plan policies governing the siting of new residential development. In this respect, although there is some conflict with the Council's housing settlement strategy, as the site lies outside of a settlement development boundary, the benefits identified from the scheme delivery and associated enabling development are considered to demonstrably outweigh the conflict. The principle of residential development on the wider site is already established and the access point is already consented. The proposal would represent a sustainable and proportionate development which, like the consented 190 scheme, would serve as enabling development funder in restoring works at St Osoph Priory. In this respect, there is an identified agreed need for such enabling development. Historic England have raised concerns regarding the enabling approach at St Osoph Priory and posed some questions to officers regarding the enabling works in the approach. These were responded to, and on that basis, officers are satisfied that the funded works directly support the agreed business plan. Officers are therefore reassured that the identified works assist in preserving a Grade 1 listed building and help to deliver the optimum viable use of that building, complying with the aspirations of the business plan and assisting in facilitating improved public access at the Priory. In respect of the impacts of the development upon nearby heritage assets, namely the listed St Osoph Priory Park and St Osoph Conservation Area to the west, the indicative plans provided suitably demonstrate that development would not result in significant harm to the setting of either of these assets. There is a consented development for 190 houses on the wider site that will change the setting to these heritage assets, and therefore the site will no longer form an area of restored gravel works, but rather a housing development adjacent to the Priory Park. The additional 24 units located on what was proposed to be the archery area to the north is a piece of land that's sandwiched between a large caravan to the north, caravan site to the north, and the consented scheme for 190 units to the south. Furthermore, the 13 units to the southern end of the site will consist predominantly of terraced housing and will be designed to fit into the semi-rural setting by appearing as farm cottages closer to the road and then blending in with the detached vernacular housing contained within the 190 scheme. The proposal was therefore considered to preserve the special character of the conservation area and the St Osoph Priory Registered Historic Park. There's also no objections from any local residents or St Osoph Parish Council, and Essex County Highways, Place Services Ecology Team, the Listed Gardens Trust, and the lead local flood authority and Anglian Water do not have any objections. In summary, the development would accord with the requirements of the National Planning Policy Framework, paragraph 221, as the benefits for the proposal for enabling development which do result in some degree of conflict with local plan policies governing the siting of new housing would help to secure the future conservation of a heritage asset and provide for housing in a sustainable location while demonstrably outweighing the disbenefits from departing from those local plan policies. The application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions at section 10.3 of the officer's report and the completion of the required section 106. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. And now we have speakers. We have one speaker on this item, which is the applicant, Harriet Vincent Wilson. Harriet, if you'd like to take a seat right by the microphone, and when you're ready, push the button in the middle and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening all. I'm Harriet Vincent Wilson, Planning Manager at City and Country. I'm here as the applicant, Welwick Farms Limited, which is part of City and Country, to speak to the outline application for an additional 37 new homes at the Welwick site in St Osoph. This is further to the implemented consent for 190 homes on the wider site. Firstly, I would like to apologise once again to members and officers for the aborted site visit back in July. This was a misunderstanding over timings on my part, but we were glad to show you around Darcy House at St Osoph Priory yesterday, and we hope that you enjoyed seeing the craftsmanship of the enabling development works that this Welwick application directly relates to. Specifically, the works include the renovation, restoration and improvement of the Grade 1 listed Darcy House, part of the estate's wedding venue function, putting the buildings back into beneficial use to sustain them for future generations. Crucially, this work has removed the completed elements of the building from Historic England's Heritage at Risk register. The work has already been undertaken as TDC agreed to a 0% interest forward funding arrangement, whereby the owner fast-tracked the identified works to enable the venue to open earlier than would have otherwise been possible, helping to reduce the conservation deficit. The enabling development application covers the vast majority of these forward-funded elements. Furthermore, the principle of development in this location is already established, and land to the north of the site is now surplus. An additional 1.1 hectares of public open space with new habitats and biodiversity enhancements will be delivered at Welwick. The enabling development arrangement supports the reuse of listed buildings, which is inherently sustainable, helping to open up the Priory further to the public. Increased visitor numbers to the St Osyth area will help to boost the local economy, and numerous jobs will be created from construction to hospitality and events. The same new build design quality that has been delivered within the Priory will be repeated here, building upon a scheme that picks up on the local historic character and materials traditionally seen within the area. The proposal represents logical, proportionate and sustainable development, generating much needed funding for St Osyth Priory restoration works. I do hope that you will be able to consider the application favourably this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll just ask the officer now, Mr. Lang, if there's anything that you'd like to come back on, any points from the speaker?
No, there's nothing to pick up on there, thank you.
Okay. Members, questions for the officer? Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, very much enjoyed the visit to St Osyth Priory, and clearly some very good work being done there. That said, I am quite concerned at the replies we've received from Historic England, and I wonder if you could help us out with that. So, page 28 of our agenda, there is a small part there that states that Historic England say we consider the application does not meet the requirements for National Policy Planning Framework, in particular paragraph numbers 205, 206 and 214. Now I have to say, as a councillor and not being a planning expert, 205, 206 and 214 are not well known to me. Can you please help me with that? Thank you.
Thank you. Just bear with us while we review those paragraphs. Yeah, so the Historic England were basically picking up on the fact that they don't consider that the development would suitably preserve the setting of the St Osyth Conservation Area and the Registered Garden of St Osyth Priory. They identified less than substantial harm. At 8.74 of the officer's report, the officer or myself has gone into detail there saying that development is considered to demonstrate sufficient public and heritage benefits that would outweigh any less than substantial harm. So Historic England have looked at it purely from a heritage viewpoint. We have acknowledged that they've identified less than substantial harm, and we've weighed that up in the balance, and we consider that there is sufficient benefits which outweigh that less than substantial harm. Clearly, the contribution of 37 houses towards the council's housing supply and the works to renovate the St Osyth Priory are works that would represent benefits that are considered to outweigh that harm. They also raised questions in respect of the enabling approach at the Priory. 8.69 of the officer's report goes into detail there in respect of the queries they raised with councillors. We sought a response from the developer, and the officer's response is there. It was largely in respect of discrepancies in the conservation deficit and whether all commercial uses that form the basis of the agreed business strategy were considered in that deficit report. Officers, again, they're not have considered weighed it up in the balance. They're not strictly relevant to the enabling development under consideration here, as this forms a small part of the wider conservation deficit at the Priory. So officers are content that the works that have been undertaken link directly back to the business plan and are all costed as part of a condition survey that was secured at that time.
Okay, so in summary, our view is different to that of Historic England. Okay, but I'm a little bit concerned in so much as they do say that there was a relative amount of harm created by the original application, and this 37 would add to that harm. Do we still hold that position, given that last time there was harm, now there's more harm? Are we still taking the same position as you've just explained in relation to that? Thank you.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. I think when they originally reviewed the first application, it was they were looking at 190 dwellings in an empty field, so there was quite a lot of harm at that stage. This now is 37, so we've got to look at the backdrop that there could be 100, or there will be 190 dwellings on there. And in terms of the two development parcels, the northern development parcel is for 24 dwellings, which is sandwiched between that caravan park and the 190 units. And at the southern end, you've got the 13 units, which will not be overly visible in terms of the wider setting of the Priory Park and the conservation area. So in officers' view, whilst they have identified less than substantial harm, as I said, we feel that the balance and the benefits associated with the development outweigh that harm.
Thank you, Chair. That will do for a minute. Thank you.
Any further questions for the officer? Councillor Alexander?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to continue, if I may, with page 28 and the Historic England. I'm a little confused. Has there been any updates? Because it looks like the last one that came in was the 18th of the 3rd, 2025.
After receiving the first two objections, we met with Historic England and explained the proposals. They were satisfied at that meeting that the development was acceptable and related back to the business plan. But after that meeting, they then sent those further comments that said they weren't willing to provide any updated comments. So the latest comments are March this year.
Yes, so I'd like some guidance, if I may. It's my understanding that this evening we're looking at an outline, and we're basically discussing the ingress there, which is okay. That's what we're here to do. So does this take what Historic England is saying? Does this take part of the application we're looking at tonight, or will this fall further on within the next stage of the application?
So yeah, as you say, this is outline for the access and the principle of the 37 extra units. When the Reserve Matters application is submitted, when we're looking at the scale and appearance, layout, landscaping, we will then reconsult with Historic England and obtain their view at that time as well.
So, okay, so this evening, with the advice, and thank you very much indeed for that, I shall be considering the access, and that basically access alone in this part of the application.
I think we need to be cautious here. Yes, access is part of this application, and it's fundamentally the details of the access to the site are part of your consideration, but the principle is part of this outline application. So the principle that you are going to get this number of properties in this location in some form, and we have an indicative plan that shows us one possible successful, potentially, form that it could take that comes forward at reserve matters. So you are dealing with the principle of development. The principle of development would pick up on the traffic, perhaps, and generated by the development. The principle development in terms of the number of households, the waste resource that may come about, and obviously other policy issues such as RAMs and biodiversity net gain and so on are tied into that. So you are dealing with not just access. If we be very careful here, outline doesn't say it's only the access. Outline is the principle, which does cover a lot of other things as well. Affordable housing and all the rest of it. It deals with some of the principles of that. When it comes to the reserve matters application, you will only be looking at layout, appearance, scale, landscaping. That is it. So the majority, when it comes to the way you break up outline and reserve matters, it actually is it's not fair to say that outline is less. It's actually probably more when it comes down to the fundamentals of the permission itself. The detail comes later, but ultimately you've got to be careful how you weigh up what could come and what is before you at the moment.
Councillor Everett.
Thank you, Chairman. So actually coming on from that, we're looking at consenting the principle of development for a number of dwellings. Does that mean that we should perhaps be thinking along the lines of up to a number rather than a specific number? And if that is the case, then shouldn't we be considering the density and other factors here of this site for up to 37 dwellings?
So this proposal is for a specific number of 37. Ultimately, it's not up to, but even if it was up to, you have to still consider the worst case scenario, which could be 37. So sometimes developers describe things as up to, so that when the reserve matters comes in and ultimately they realise they can't quite achieve that number for whatever reason, they only come in with 28, fair enough. But either way, we're dealing with 37 as a principle. However, 37 could be 37 terrace properties that are very small. 37 could be massive, great detached properties that are very big. Ideally, the layout ultimately is a reserve matter, so you'll deal with that at that stage. But they still need to demonstrate to us that a scheme can work at an indicative level for an outline in principle to be approved. And that is what we've got before us, that we consider that an outline split between these two areas with a number of houses generally proposed within these areas can be achieved. If members feel that there is further criteria that should be imposed, like for example, we have sometimes in the past said that any reserve matters layout should be in accordance with the indicative plan or very similar to, that is something that we have done in the past. There are perhaps other parameters that you might say that only a certain number of properties should be within one of these two areas in order to safeguard density or spatial potential density, because obviously that changes depending on the size of the property. But there may be other parameters that they may wish to set, but ultimately layout, when it comes as a reserve matter, will deal with that anyway. And if the layout is not to your satisfaction because it's too dense or too overdeveloped or doesn't have enough landscaping or doesn't have enough open space, then ultimately that is something you can pick up as the reserve matters application.
Thank you. I think that helps. In terms of what we're losing here is community space, and we're gaining some buildings on that community space. There is a question in my mind whether the density of these to achieve 37 dwellings is appropriate, and whether there is enough community space allowed within that to perhaps not compensate for all of the community space lost, but at least for some of it.
So just to clarify, the site to the north, at the top of the screen, was for private archery. So effectively, arguably not open to the community or the public in any event. The site to the south, yes, was I think open space, which you could argue was open and available to the public that may have been using the site as a whole. Whether it's of a good quality, given the fact it's fairly related to a road at that point, that's a debatable matter that perhaps you need to judge further, and whether or not you find that acceptable. I don't think that's a question. I think that's a matter of debate in terms of the principle of putting development there.
So perhaps you can help here. So if we were concerned about losing that community space, if we said rather than 37 dwellings, we said 37, there was 13 at the bottom, wasn't there? Minus 13, so 24, thank you. My brain not working today. Would that be something that we could do, or do we need to be more specific than that in terms of saying we need community space here?
Do you know what? I've got so many scenarios going through my head, it gets a bit busy now. Ultimately, if you were to say that we would grant outline planning permission subject to no development on this southern portion, for example, but you ultimately would still have 37 granted in principle, the argument would be that the reserve matters would put all 37 at the top end and try to create a development that would satisfy that. Now, I don't even know if that's viability possible. That could be a different issue, and it might be deemed to be unreasonable by the applicant. They could, go ahead and appeal on that basis of that particular constraint. Ultimately, I can't change the number of dwellings because that is the proposal before you. So if the members feel that 37 in principle it can't be achieved in some form to satisfy them, then it might be that they consider that to be a reason for refusal if there is a ground in planning terms to do so. I'm trying to think of a clearer way to put that, but I do apologise. I think perhaps there's a matter of see where the debate goes a little bit more in terms of concerns or benefits that you may be considering.
I'm just going to hand over to Councillor White for his comments in a minute, but before I do, I have to say that the responses from Historic England did trouble me, and of course Councillor Bray beat me to it. But I accept what the officer has said. I accept that, but it is that they did not wish to comment any further. Sorry, Mr. Pateman G, go ahead.
Mr. Guyver may wish to say more, but did you want to come in before I say something? Because I was going to be blunt otherwise.
No. It was just to confirm that I was in attendance at the same meeting that Mr. Lang referred to, and Historic England were given the opportunity if they wanted to sort of revise the wording of the letter that had been provided off the back of what was very useful, positive discussion where we understood what the position was, and they've chosen not to, and that's the position. So the latest correspondence, written correspondence, is as reported in here, but I can corroborate Mr. Lang's statement about us having a meeting with Historic England.
Thank you, Mr. Guyver, that's most helpful. The other thing is that if the committee was mindful to approve this application, we could have an informative on this to have the reserve matters application come to committee. Good. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Councillor White, you've been very patient. All yours.
Thank you very much, Chairman. When I first opened this application, I saw outline planning application access only to be considered. And of course, we have already agreed for the 190 that the access has already been agreed. But John has helped us on that. It isn't only where the centre of the road would come or that sort of thing, it's all the extra items. So he's convinced me that that's right. Now, The recommendation says outline approval subject to a section 106. Now, on the 9th of March 2016, the family did agree a section 106 agreement for the whole of that land. At that time, it didn't say that the bit at the top's going to that's the map in the agreement. Will this now have to be revised, or how will we overcome what is said in the first section 106 that was agreed?
I'm sure Chairman Fisher can take that further if need be, but ultimately 106s can run alongside each other ultimately. And of course, you know, the first 106 is dealing with that development that was approved, and this 106 picks up on the development before you at this moment in time. They are and can be run simultaneously and both apply at the same time. I don't know if my colleague would like to take that any further.
Thank you, Chair. No, there won't be any amendments to the earlier Section 106 agreement because that related to the scheme as a whole, and that made reference to the securing the enabling development from the approvals at the time, but it also included reference to there was a schedule in there relating to buildings like Darcy House, which were works that might be secured in the future. So it was sort of desirable, you know, to identifying buildings that were desirable to restore in the future through further grant funding, enabling development schemes, etc. So what the Section 106 agreement will do, if approved this evening for this scheme, it will secure the funding that's already been forward funded for this development site. It will ensure that forward funding is, and those development works are linked to this scheme. That's what it will do.
I didn't realise you could run two at the same time and on the same piece of land, so you've convinced me we can.
Yes, because we've got a new grant. We would potentially have a new grant of planning permission. So, and that needs to be linked to the works that have been carried out at Darcy House and the funding that the stream, you know, the funding that's come from the enabling development to secure those works. So it's the Section 106 agreement will relate to this particular development scheme.
Any further questions? Councillor Sudra, then Councillor Bray.
Right, my question's on highways. In here they've recommended like the pavement for bus stop and an island for pedestrian crossing, essentially to be able to go to the village at St. Joseph. So do we know, will there be traffic lights there? Will the speed limits be reduced? Because that is no speed limit zone.
Yeah, the plan on the screen shows the works the highway works that were secured as part of the previous scheme. So yeah, you're right. There was a pedestrian island and a pedestrian and cycle footpath into the village. The matter of the speed limit reduction is something that's being secured as part of the highway works agreement. So that's something that's going to be dropping down to 40 miles an hour, I believe. So that's something that highways are working at their end in terms of linking it to this section 278 agreement. Yeah, there won't be traffic lights. It will be as seen on that screen, and that speed limit is being actively reduced as part of that agreement.
Thank you. Yeah, I would welcome a speed reduction, and even possibly down to 30 would be good.
Thank you, Councillor Sudra. Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be annoying and go back to Historic England, sorry. I'm just going to quickly read the fourth paragraph up on page 28, which says, Historic England cannot support this application. We ask the Council to carefully consider whether it is satisfied that the information before them aligns with the enabling development guidance and secures the long-term future of the place. You may wish to obtain your own legal advice on this matter. Have we done so, and are we now satisfied that it does align?
May I? So I'll just turn that dramatically, but I then just lost the page I was about to read. Right, there we go. Ultimately, Historic England have objected, but they haven't actually given us a very clear reason why, and despite multiple times of trying to achieve and get hold of that reason, they haven't provided it to us. So I'm going to be quite blunt about that point. Ultimately, they are quoting three distinct paragraphs at us. One, that the harm of any level requires clear and convincing justification of, and great weight shall be given to the consideration of the historic asset. Therefore, that is a judgment for the local planning authority, and that is the judgment that we as officers are providing to you. Secondly, the paragraph 206 talks about, this is the other paragraph they refer to, talks about leading to less than substantial harm and whether or not the sufficient public benefit of the proposal outweigh that harm. Again, that is another conversation, debate, judgment you as decision maker need to make, but as officers we are recommending to you that we feel that the public benefit outweighs in this case, and my officer here has detailed that in his report. And then lastly, we are here with 214, which talks about the local planning authority to assess the benefits of the proposal for enabling developments which would otherwise conflict with planning policies. In this case, we are looking at the conflict of planning policy, that this is outside of our settlement boundary, and whether or not in itself we find acceptable for any material reasons, or indeed one of those material reasons being the future conservation of the heritage asset. Now, we have given you an assessment on that basis as well. In legal terms, therefore, we have addressed all three of these paragraphs within the report to our satisfaction in the judgment that we have provided you. It is not a case of we have failed to give you that judgment, which would be a matter of judicial review. It is a matter that we have given you our expert opinion in respect of those qualities in what our experience can give you. Obviously, as decision maker, your judgment and what weight you give to these material considerations is for you to make, but we can do no more is effectively the answer I can give you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that. That's a good explanation. I think I'm almost there. Superb. I'm a big fan of Historic England, so we should ask questions like that, I think, but I think you've explained that extremely well. Thank you, Chair. I think when the time comes, I'll be quite happy to propose approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bray. Further questions for our officer, and then we will go into debate on this application. Any further questions? Councillor Sudra?
Yeah, just maybe a little clarification. Like we've got a lot of information on the breakdown of funding, the way they're funding their business plan, etc. It's not something I've sort of seen before in planning. It might be a normal thing, perhaps. But is it a normal thing? And I notice Historic England have sort of looked into it and mentioned discrepancies as well. So I didn't know if that was some part of it.
Yeah, so as part of an enabling development, the developer has to provide a viability appraisal which shows that the development they're proposing can fund those works. So they've provided the financial information which links back to that approved business plan that Joanne mentioned, that was linked to the original enabling development on the wider site. So that's all been costed, that's all been reviewed by BNP Paribas, who are an independent assessor, and they were heavily involved at that time in 2016 as well. So yeah, that's all been reviewed, that's been looked at, and they're satisfied that the figures add up, and the development is in accordance with that business plan and in accordance with the enabling works.
Thank you for the clarity.
Councillor Everett.
Thank you. Just one final question. This is clearly one of those applications that we need to consider the benefits against the deficits. Can you list for me, to make it nice and simple for us, the benefits and the disbenefits, and how you have weighed them?
I think, yeah, 8.74 of the officer's report looks at that. As we said, Historic England identified less than substantial harm from the development, and that is considered to be the main disbenefit. The fact the site is outside the settlement boundary is another disbenefit. But weighing up those disbenefits, the development is considered to, of course, fund important restoration works at the Priory. It also contributes 37 dwellings towards the council's housing supply. And there's also an increased public open space provision across the wider site, because the original proposal proposed that private archery club at the northern end. Now that's all been opened up. There's actually an increase in open space across the site. So yeah, there's looking at 8.46 of the officer's report as well, it does say that there's a 43.5% level of open space across the site, which is an increase over the previous approval.
So we're now into debate. So anybody want to kick us off on that one? We've already had Councillor Bray indicate that when a time comes he would be making a proposal. Councillor Alexander.
I would be more than happy to, listening to the whole of the debate, which I must admit is very interesting. And I've just been reading on section 66.1 of the NPPF. And, well, quite frankly, I think this all matches quite nicely within what you have achieved within the time and how it affects the integrity. There's no harm to the actual historic part of this. Yeah, I think it says that. So I'm quite happy to second this, and I look forward to reserved matters coming back to us.
Any further comments? Councillor Bray?
Yeah, Chair, good point from Councillor Alexander. I would like, as proposer, to see the reserved matters come back to committee, please. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a proposal for approval from Councillor Bray, and that the reserved matters come back to committee, and the recommendation is in our papers on page 52. And that's been seconded by Councillor Alexander. Could I have a show of hands to approve this application? And that is unanimous. Thank you, members. That application is approved. We'll have a 5-minute break. Welcome back. Tendring District Council Planning Committee on Tuesday, the 2nd of September 2025. And our final item on the agenda is item 7, which is A325/00768 FULHH and 24 Victoria Crescent, Lawford. And to present this item for us, Mr. Payman G. Thank you.
Thank you. So this application is householder development. It's here before us because the Tendring District Council owns the land. We are looking at the installation of a 2-metre high fencing along the rear garden. This is the site plan, number 22 as shown. The B1352 is to the north and east, Victoria Crescent to the south. The LB shown on that plan is not listed building, it's actually letterbox. Next to that is the Parish Council notice board and a bin on the junction corner. The block plan, sorry, let's move on to the block plan. The block plan, not ideal, but it essentially shows the details of the proposal in terms of layout for the new fence. That's the fence in terms of elevations. The panels are 1.98, the posts are 2 metres, so therefore taken overall it is a 2 metre fence enclosure. The rear being towards the B1352. That is the front door, effectively the front of the property. The bungalow is number 22 to the south, and then we're looking at the perceived rear elevation because it's also fronting another road. That's the rear elevation and where the majority of the fence will be. Just to put into context, we have to the rear, we have a footpath, we have the grass verge, then the B road, and of course beyond that to the north we have a reasonable size industrial estate, and then obviously to the south is the Victoria Crescent itself. These are neighbouring views of the neighbouring properties, just those two photos there. And returning to the rear of the site, so in conclusion, the proposal for a 2 metre high, close bordered fencing within the rear garden of the property. It will run along this boundary as you see on plan, the north and east and western boundaries, and sited behind the existing chain link fence that you can see on that photograph. The applicant considers this necessary for security and privacy, as the rear garden is completely open in its nature, which you would have seen on your site visit. It is not considered there is any harm to any extent that would warrant refusal in terms of amenity grounds to the neighbours. It is accepted that this will alter the visual appearance of the street scene in terms of the B road. But in the context of the dominant wide grass verge, nature of the street itself, it's not considered to be detrimental to this extent to warrant refusal, and therefore the recommendation by officers to approve subject to the standard time and approved plans condition. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Payman G. There are no speakers for this application, and I'd just like to remind you that as Mr. Payman G has already said, this application is before us because it is council land. Councillor Bray.
Propose approval, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bray. Are there any questions for Mr. Payman G? Councillor Wiggins?
I mean, I'm in agreement, but I just wondered, all the other houses round the back have all got chain link fences, and I just wondered whether there was anything, you know, any rules or anything that should say that it should only be that high and that type of fence.
We have a variety of styles of fences in terms of panel or close bordered, but they all set behind the historical, if I can call it that, chain link fence that's only 1 metre high. They're not proposing to remove the current chain link fence, although under permitted development there is nothing stopping them doing so. Ultimately though, this is land owned by the council, so I assume whatever arrangement is that they can't do that. But the proposal is essentially for the fencing to be behind the existing chain link fence up to 2 metres.
Thank you, and I'm happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wiggins. Councillor Everett.
Just a quick question. In terms of access or ingress and egress of vehicles coming on and off the site, the gates that allow that to be closed up, the fence, do they open to the outside or to the inside of the property?
didn't, hang on, bear with me. I'm not sure if the proposal included gates or not. Bear with me one moment. The proposal isn't to include anything to the front. The proposal is for the rear fencing. So the access in terms of the vehicular access would be unaffected by this proposal. Sorry, let me change my mouse so you can see it. Point of options, laser. Does that work? Yeah. So the fencing the proposed is essentially across this point, along here, and along the side here, not along the frontage.
If there are no further questions, we have a proposal from Councillor Bray to approve the application, seconded by Councillor Wiggins. So we'll go to the vote then. May I have a show of hands to approve this application? And that is unanimous. That application is approved. Thank you, members. So that just leaves me to give you the date of the next meeting, which will be on Tuesday, the 30th of September